So yesterday, I said that you all were loved and that that is a new piece of your identity in Jesus. But you don't need to hear that from me. That's not going to last. What will last is an encounter with Christ. Hearing that message from him directly to you. So the natural question for me that follows that is, how do we do that? How do we get that direct encounter from Christ? Because it's easy to say that, but in my life, I got to go search it out. But recently, God's been asking me to befriend a woman whose identity was solely in her illness, and her identity was healed. Now, she was called the woman with the issue of blood. And just that title alone shows you what her identity was. We don't even know her name. There are plenty of names in the Bible. Her name could have been there, but it wasn't. Her identity was in her illness. And we tend to want to focus on the story of her physical healing because that's so amazing. She was instantly healed of bleeding for 12 long years. That's phenomenal. But I think there's a hidden gem in this story that a lot of times we overlook. And that's the healing of her identity. Because as she went through this process with this encounter with Christ, he not only said, "You're healed," he said, "Go in peace." And that peace, I think, is the healing of her identity. It's a new way of looking at herself because she looked him in the eye and he looked her in the eye. He took time for her and said, "Go in peace." And he called her daughter. Daughter. She was a messy princess. Life was messy. And now she has a new identity as princess. So how do we learn from her what it took to get that encounter from Christ? Because sometimes Christ in the Bible, we see him coming to people, and sometimes we see us needing to go to him. And that was her story. She went to him. And I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, she had nothing to lose, so why not go to Christ?" I think she had everything to lose. Speaking of someone whose identity can be found in illness, you don't want to lose one more thing. You don't have the strength sometimes to get to where you want to go. She had to have been exhausted, dehydrated, anemic. I can't imagine she had the physical strength to get there on her own. It was her faith that got her there. And she was brave. Because in that culture, she was unclean. She wasn't supposed to be out in public. She wasn't supposed to be around people because if she touched them, they'd be unclean. And they couldn't go to worship in the temple. So where is brave in my life? And where is brave in your life? Brave for me means stepping out into a new identity of God's chosen child. It's a word he gave me years ago. But I have to choose to accept that label when I feel insecure. I have to choose to accept that label when somebody tells me that I'm something other than chosen. So for you, I'd love for you for the next 5 days, write the word brave down and ask God what brave means for you in your next step with him, in your encounter with him.